Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Goldrick, and you are most welcome back to the second presentation of Becoming an Effective Learner under the Certificate in First Line Management course. In our first presentation, we reviewed the Harvard style of referencing in NCI, and in this second short presentation, we are going to look at academic writing in general, and we're going to go through an example first assignment within the CFLM course. Okay, so let's get started. So to begin on academic writing, why do lecturers and tutors use assignments? Why do they give them out to students? Well, if we think about it, a lecturer or a tutor will always give a CA as a primary source of evidence that you as students have not only understood your coursework, but have in some way created your own ideas about what you've learned. So in that way, when you get your first academic assignments, it's very important for each of you to keep in mind that you are going to be expected to not only describe the area of study or phenomena, but critically evaluate previous thinking around the subject, so the concepts of doing a literature review for say. And last but certainly not least, the ability to construct an argument about your views around a particular subject. And in that way, we highlight the fact that you need to be able to evaluate different theories, different models, using strengths and weaknesses, comparing and contrasting with other similar theories, looking at previous research and the state of the art. So, moving on, what do we firstly do? How do we get started? So, your first assignments in college, and particularly in National College of Ireland, will most likely be short essays, anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 words. And rather than being asked to write a descriptive essays, you will more than likely be asked to write a critical essay, which means when planning your essays, it's important to keep in mind firstly, and probably most importantly, the question. What is the essay asking you to do? And in that way, it's really good to get to know the differences between a description, a discussion, and an evaluation. And if I'm being honest, more than likely at higher level, you're going to be asked to do all of three, but possibly most importantly, you will be asked to do the last one, which is an evaluation, which allows you to give your own opinion and the express views of other authors, researchers, and academics that are relevant to that particular theory or model. Besides the actual question itself, you're going to be asked to consider the structure of your assignment. So each section of your assignment should be somewhat distinguishable from the rest, i.e. your introduction to your topic, your main body of text which leads into the discussion, and finally your conclusion. Now it sounds like an easy process or an easy image, but it's very important to keep that in mind whether you're doing your first essays or whether you're doing your dissertations or your PhD doctorates. And last again, but certainly not least, when you're undertaking any academic assignment, it's really important to consider your sources of information. Try to back up each of your arguments with an appropriate reference. And we're going to look at that more a little later on. Okay, so we're going to move into a more specific part of this presentation, whereby I'm going to look at one example first year assignment and talk you through how to break it down and to attack it. So, this is surrounding the concept of statutory law and common law, and the context is Sweetie is a small bakery in Dunleary which employs 6 members of staff. Daisy is employed as a general operative to feed dough into a mixing machine. The dough has to be pushed into a large machine in order for the blade to cut it. In order to do this, she has to stand on a stool and use her hands to push the dough into the machine. Not very likely, but let's take it anyway. Last week, while trying to do this, she stood on a shaky stool as no other was available. She fell in and was severely injured by the blade on the machine. Okay, so quite a serious accident has occurred in the workplace. So as part of this assignment, the author must advise Sweetie of their common law and statutory obligations should Daisy decide to take legal action, which is worth 70 marks. We need to then discuss whether Daisy may be liable for her own injuries, which is 20 marks. And lastly, in relation to a claim for personal injuries of this type, we need to identify and describe the relevant forum for resolving the claim. So what's the procedure for making claims within Ireland? So Sounds easy enough, but how do we go about organising the introduction and making of each section? So, always remember that your introduction should be a roadmap to the rest of your assignment, and this is my go at it. So as the introduction, this assignment will cover the area of common law, health and safety, and will explore the concept of contributory negligence. The first part of this assignment will consist of advice offered to the company Sweetie surrounding common law, statutory duties, and the implications of the Safety, Health and Welfare at Work Act 2005. The second part of this assignment will discuss the area of contributory negligence and explore whether the employee Daisy contributed to her own injuries through negligence. Finally, the assignment will describe how the injury claims are processed. So, for this type of essay, which is a very factual based essay, always try to keep your introductions clear and concise so that the reader knows where this is going. So in this essence, it's short, it's sweet, and it allows us to jump directly into our first part of it, which is worth 70 marks itself. So for the main body of the essay, we firstly need to consider the common law duty of an employer to provide a safe system and place of work, so essentially the duty of care. We next need to explore and identify the relevant statutory duties owned by both the employers and employees, and this essentially will have a little bit of overlap, so just to be clear on that. Following that, we need to explore further the implications of reasonable care under common law and other relevant acts. So what acts do we need to consider when looking at this particular essay? And lastly, we need to highlight this area using relevant case law examples. So considering what case law examples will be relevant to this particular case. So that's part A. For part B, which is worth 20 marks, we need to then discuss the concept of contributory negligence. And under that concept, we need to consider, did Daisy in this case contribute to her own injuries through negligence? And we can argue for and against that. But when we consider that, we need to back our decisions up and our advice up using case law. So what cases will be relevant to this? So there's a little bit more of a literature review needed for that particular part. Lastly then, it's probably important to question overall whether employers could use contributory negligence as a defence in court. And again, the literature will be able to inform that decision as well. So that's part B. And lastly, for part C, we need to describe how claims such as this are made and processed in Ireland. And remember when doing this section that it's quite a short section, so be quite concise and detail the processes involved in doing so. And finally, to conclude your essay, it's a good idea to summarise the work that you've done in each of the 3 sections. And what's also good at this stage is to summarise from your own perspective what you learned from the task itself, which demonstrates to the reader, whether that's your examiner, whether it's your lecturer or your tutor, that you've not only read over the question and read over the materials, but you can demonstrate how you've actually learned from the process involved itself. So that concludes both presentations for today. The first being referencing in the Harvard style in National College of Ireland, and secondly, how to approach your first essays in the Certificate in First Line Management course. Again, as always, I hope it's been helpful, and if you've any questions at all, you can contact me by email or by telephone. Thanks for listening, and I'll chat to you again soon.